So in this video we're going to be talking about how the peace broke down and the Greeks ended up in the most catastrophic war in their history. So here's a quick recap of the 5th century timeline. Remember that all of this is happening in rapid succession and in concert with each other. So the classical era, and especially the 5th century, is things happening on top of each other, socially, politically, militarily, culturally, in every aspect of the Greek world. Everything is coming to a climax. Everything is coming to conflict. Everything is developing in unexpected and unprecedented ways. A lot of this has to do with the turning point of the Persian invasions, which not only bring the Greeks together, but also create the condition of there being a alternative hegemon for the Greek world. It brings Athens, which was already the cultural leader and social leader of the Greek world, into a position to be a alternative military leader as well, especially as the Spartans step back when there is a need to make the war aggressive, to take the war to the Persians. And so the founding of the Deliad League after the invasion of Xerxes changes the game and pushes us down the path toward the polarization of the Greek world. After the Persian invasions, more and more there's a sense that you are either a friend of Athens or a friend of Sparta. And this has to do with the political situation. It has to do with the radical, diametrically opposed ideologies of Athens and Sparta. And so we have this long brewing problem, this long-term tension that is building up in the Greek world, and it has a great deal to do with not only these opposing pursuits, these opposing ideas of the ideal society that Athens and Sparta have, that ultimately each side thinks is a dangerous influence on the rest of the Greek world. But also we have the increasing identification of Athens with the demos and Sparta with the Aristoi. And so the Athens and Sparta come to represent the two sides of Greek society that's present in every single polis. The tension that drives the entire Greek world is the tension that's present in the polis itself from its very origins at the end of the Dark Age. And so this builds to the point where it bursts out in a series of conflicts. First, the Undeclared War, and then the interim of the 30 Years' Peace, and then the Peloponnesian War itself. And the Peloponnesian War, in turn, takes place in a number of stages. It's divided in half by the temporary truce of the Peace of Nicias and the escalation of the war through the Athenian efforts to take Sicily. And so this is a series of conflicts, a series of highs and lows that each stage ratchets up the tension, ratchets up the polarization, further divides the Greek world until more and more mental energy is being expended on this. More and more there's a sense that there needs to be an explosion to resolve this in some way. And as the Peloponnesian War breaks out, more and more it becomes expected that there is going to be a conflict for who is going to be the hegemon. The fact that the Greek polis is supposed to be independent and autonomous, and there isn't supposed to be an overarching leader, that there isn't supposed to be a a polis that's stronger and dominates all the others. The very idea of the polis is that each one stands shoulder to shoulder, like the hoplites and the phalanx. There isn't supposed to be a hero in the battlefront, and there isn't supposed to be a dominant polis, but the conflict that takes place in the second half of the 5th century, and especially the Peloponnesian War itself, is generations that become conditioned to accepting that this is something that this rivalry is expected, that this conflict is understandable, and that the battle for hegemony is rational. So, where does this leave us in terms of how these play out? The Undeclared War, essentially ends in a draw, and the main result is to calcify the polarization of the Greek world. The Undeclared War produces the full divide of the Greek world into us and them, and more and more this means that this becomes a fixed part of the Greek understanding of the world around them. The 30 years peace just cements this in place. And so the 30 years peace, the provisions of which are all about ensuring that each alliance becomes, an us or them, a binary division of the Greek world, a perpetuation of a Cold War, a facing off of superpowers, however you want to think of it. But this ensures that the two sides, the Athenian alliance and the Peloponnesian alliance, become more hostile, more dangerous, more violent within their own alliances, and makes the outbreak of war inevitable. This 30 years peace doesn't solve anything at all. On the contrary, it heightens the tension and makes war between Sparta and Athens inevitable. But here's the thing. So we have this long-term conflict between Sparta and Athens, but all of the flashpoints, all of the actual catalysts for the outbreak of the Peloponnesian War, as with the Undeclared War, have to do with Athenian trade expansion and the trade rivalry between Athens and Corinth. And so during the 30 years, so-called 30 years peace, which remember only lasts for 15 years, during the 30 years peace, we have Athens becoming even more aggressive in developing a commercial empire in direct provocation of Corinth. And this takes the form of the establishment of a string of new colonies in very important commercially strategic places, in particular in the Black Sea, and here, as we see, in the north of the Aegean, that gives them direct access to the rich and vital raw materials, natural resources of Thrace and the Scythian steppes to the north. And these new colonies are frequently clericies, which are the special kind of colony that in which the colony does not become independent but becomes an extension of Athens. And then we have a succession of conflicts that lead us directly into the war, all of them involving Athens and Corinth. So the first of these involves Corcyra. Corcyra is an important colony of Corinth. It is strategically located for the trade routes of the west in the Adriatic, on the western coast, off the western coast of the Greek mainland. And the Corcyrans are, to a certain extent, unusual in that the way that Corinth has treated them has led them into rebellion and hostility against their own mother city. The typical Greek colony is supposed to be independent, but also to have a special relationship with its mother city, especially in terms of trade. And the mother city is supposed to intervene in times of crisis in any of its colonies and provide new leadership and so forth. And so Corcyra is unusual in that it has resisted the relationship with Corinth, and this has gotten worse and worse until it gets to the point where Corcyra is expecting outright military hostility from Corinth. They're expecting Corinth to come in its ships and take Corcyra back into the fold by force. So Corcyra needs help against this great power, and the problem is that by this point the Greek world is divided, us and them. There's only two possibilities to turn to for help. One is Sparta, and the other is Athens. And Sparta won't help because Sparta is closely allied with Corinth. And so Corcyra, having no other options, forges an alliance with Athens. Athens isn't particularly happy about it either, but in this case they agree to the alliance and eventually end up sending a fleet of ships to the naval battle with Corcyra, in which the Corcyrans are able to fend off an attempt at conquest by Corinth. The Corinthians, of course, see this as an act of war by Athens' part and a direct provocation, and it has, because Corcyra is so important to them in terms of their commercial location and the exploitation of trade routes in the Adriatic and Magna Graecia and so forth. This is particularly sticks in the craw of the Corinthians. As a relationship with Corinth deteriorates rapidly, Athens suddenly realizes that they have an ally, a member of the Delian League, that is a Corinthian colony, and a much more normal Corinthian colony in that Patadaia has a perfectly normal, warm relationship with its mother city. And so as an Athenian ally, this is now a chink in its armor. This is now a potential vulnerability. And so the Athenians turn to Patadaia and issue an ultimatum that they have to tear down their walls and break their relationship with Corinth. And here's where we need to remember that each polis, including the colonies, which are new polis foundations, are supposed to be independent, and no independent state in any period of history would willingly tear down its own walls and submit to this kind of treatment, willingly make itself vulnerable in this kind of situation, willingly surrender its sovereignty. And so the Patadaians refuse the ultimatum. Their alliance, their friendship with Athens doesn't extend to this. So Athens besieges Patadaia and undertakes a military operation to reduce Patadaia into direct Athenian control in order to eliminate this potential threat. Once again, Corinth takes this as an act of outrageous aggression on Athens' part against an independent polis that is also a colony under Corinth's protection. And so, once again, Corinth is provoked. And then we have the final provocation of the Megaran Decrees. Once again, Megara comes into play. Megara is now once again an ally of the Peloponnesians, and so with relations going from bad to worse with Corinth and Sparta, Athens is on high alert, and they see a potential problem with Megara. They accuse Megara of of coming over the border and misusing sacred land that falls within Attica. What really matters here is not the accusation, but the result, which is to deny Megara access to the markets at Athens, to the agora, and to the markets at all of Athens's allies. And this is the vast majority of the places where Megara is trading, and this means the Megaran economy goes down the hole, and propaganda rapidly starts to spread that the result of the Megaran Decrees is that the Megarans are going to starve, and stories start to pass around that the Megarans rapidly begin to suffer under this treatment by Attica. It's very difficult to get a handle on the extent to which this is actually true as opposed to being propaganda, but once again, this is the breaking point. This is the straw that makes Corinth turn to its ally Sparta and demand that there be war, that Athens must be stopped, that Athens is riding roughshod over the independence of the Greek communities, that it is mistreating its allies, that it has to be stopped from its corruption of the Greek world, and its efforts to become an imperial ruler over the Greeks. The Corinthians demand that the Athenians be stopped. The series of provocations to Corinthian trade, but the Spartans ultimately agree. They were reluctant to join Corinth in the Undeclared War, but now they see where Corinth sees a commercial threat, Sparta in Athens sees a cultural threat to the integrity of Hellas itself. And so they are willing to go to war against Athens to stop Athens' culture from taking over and dominating the entire Greek world. And this brings us into the actual Peloponnesian War, and we'll see how that goes as we proceed. For now, that's that.